Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of cinematropolis.com. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and we have made it to the most wonderful time of the movie-going year. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Oscar season. Honestly, that might be a little bit of overkill. Maybe it's not actually the most wonderful time of the movie-going year for most people out there. But hey, we've got a really good show in store for you today. So annual tradition, I am sitting down with co-host Laron Chapman, the writer-director of Freaky AF film. Laron, welcome back. Here we are again this year.
Another year, another movie. This is an interesting year for the Oscars, I think. I think we'll be surprised, hopefully surprised.
I really hope we're surprised, yeah. It's recapping last year where the Green Book kind of swept the show a little bit. I think we're in great need of something that's a little less
palate cleanser.
Yeah,
from last year, because for the most part, I think last year's ceremony went really well, minus the major wins. So.
So last year they ditched the host. That was actually surprisingly pretty good.
Yeah.
I know that was a big talking point. Last year we sat down with Chelsea Ratterman and Adam Chitwood, and it was like a whole talking point. How's it going to work? Is it going to flow well? And worked out pretty well.
It went pretty smoothly without the host, surprising to many of us, because we were all kind of grieving it. And then afterwards we're like, we don't need it.
Nah. I just missed the moment. So the host thing is so tricky because I feel like if in an ideal world, you just get a good host every year because I think the host does add a certain something when it's done right. The problem is 9 times out of 10, it's not done right, and then it takes away from the show in such a way that it's just better to not have one.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we could just get better hosts, but
yeah,
not so much. Okay, well, no host this year. I think we're in for another fun show on that front. Looks like I think it seemed like the Academy was trying to maybe get one a few months ago, and then I imagine there was a lot of deals that went out, and no one took the bait. And The Rock was still unavailable, unfortunately.
right.
Yeah. Let's. I do remind everyone, of course, you can find all of our Cinematropolis thoughts, including. We've been a little quiet on the home front the last few months, just because life's kind of crazy. But we're still talking about movies. We did a kind of a really cool top 10 film, not just top films of the decade. It's kind of like a multi-part series we did at the beginning of the year this year. So I hope you'll check that out. And we can find, of course, all that over at thecinematropolis.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/thecinematropolis and on Twitter at thecinematrop. All right, Laron. So let's just cut to the chase here. 2020 Oscars, no host. What did you think of this year's nominees?
I think there's always a collective groan whenever the nominees are announced every year because there's always the one thing where, we're pushing for the most. And you're not going to avoid it. It was a top-heavy year. We had great films pretty much across the board. So I think for the most part, upon reflection, I think the nominees are actually pretty reflective of some of the best films this year. My initial thought was just, you're thinking of those gaping holes that were missed, in the mix. But for the most part, I think what it was that was disappointing was that there were no genuine surprises. Everything kind of fell into place, very kind of paint by numbers in a sense. And it's always nice to be surprised by a nominee that say wasn't even on your own radar. And we didn't get many of those. So. But in general, I think the things that were nominated were mostly deserving.
Just for some context. So, I feel like every year there's usually like one or two black sheep where you're like, really? What I always get the name wrong. It was Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, right? Mm-hmm. That was The Reader.
It was
you're like, how did this? And The Reader was back when they only had the 5 nominations, and of course it's somewhat relevant to this year. Mm-hmm. Most memorably, it took the spot that a lot of people wanted for The Dark Knight back in 2009. Sure. Looking at the nominees this year, so for Best Picture, you've got Ford v. Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. I actually feel like these are all very good films to varying degrees. I like some of them a lot more than I like others. I know Joker, of course, and a sort of like, I guess the biggest surprise was that Joker got as many nominations as it did, but like in a very on-brand 2019, 2020 world that actually wasn't a surprise because we're like, of course that movie got tons of nominations.
Right. Is it the same amount of nominations as Titanic, or was it slightly less?
I think it's one less. It's got 12, I believe. I think Titanic was 13, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Listeners out there can correct me, but it's up there as one of the most nominated films in Oscar history. And even that movie, like, and we'll get into it and get to the awards talk. But I think there's a lot to really like about that movie. I don't know if I like the movie as a whole. I think the timing of it is probably one of the bigger factors there. But a lot of people really hate that movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, it seems like they're hating on it pretty strong, and I can't say that I haven't contributed to that in some way, but I have to admit, I mean, I did like the film walking out. I think you and I had a conversation very shortly after it, like, I liked it. I don't know what everyone's problem was, and then as it settles in, it kind of fell apart in my mind, some of the story elements. But it's one of those movies where it's not necessarily the sum of all of its parts. There's great elements in it, that are really well done, many of which are nominated. It's nominated for, but there's something about the story that doesn't hold together to me in the end. But
yeah, I think, and you and I kind of have had ongoing conversations about that movie. I think there are a lot of parts that are really great. I think ultimately, and ironically, it's nominated in both these categories. Especially the script seems kind of flimsy, and then the directing, Todd Phillips, I actually think it's his best directed film.
Well, yeah,
and I think it's very competently directed. The thing is, it just borrows so heavily from Martin Scorsese films.
And,
so
he's nominated also. So it's kind of
weird. He's running against he's up against Scorsese,
his own influence.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this is
kind of flattering in a certain way. Yeah.
Exactly. It's Taxi Driver with a comic book character. That's literally what it is. But in many ways, especially stylistically speaking, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so Joker, I think, being the big topic, and again, I want to bring this back because so often people are like, "Well, the Academy doesn't care about popular movies; they don't like blockbusters." Well, Joker made almost $1 billion worldwide, and it got 13 nominations. So I guess, in a certain light, this would dismiss that narrative that I feel like I've heard a lot of. I do find it hilarious. It's a DC film, and everyone's been all about the Marvel films for like 10 years now, and I'm like, well, it's just interesting. I don't know if it's better than those, but I think it's at least more ambitious than Marvel films, I guess.
For sure.
It's weird.
Probably the one I think that's most interesting that was not nominated for Best Picture was The Farewell. And that seemed to be pretty much a success all across the board. And
international success. And huge hit for indie films.
I don't know if it was nominated for anything.
I don't think it was nominated for anything. That's totally shut out. Yeah.
And no Lulu Wong. It was a great little gem, and another crowd pleaser this year. But
it was a trick film, especially in the year that maybe it's because they're like, okay, well, we got Parasite, we got Bong Joon-ho, so we've hit our ceiling for Asian directors.
Asian directors, I guess.
Okay, and I'm not going to get into this on the podcast. At least I'm bringing it up. So, just have to ask: The Farewell, foreign film, American film. I have strong feelings about this, but everyone the awards tend to totally disregard what the directors said on the matter. But I don't know.
I feel like it's an American film about foreign characters, so it's you can make an argument either way. I think, but if you look at it, if you split the subtitles versus just
is
English,
that how we define foreign film now?
I guess so it seems like there's equal amount of subtitles as there are English speaking so, but I don't know if that's what qualifies it to be a foreign film. Like Parasite through and through feels like a foreign film.
Oh yeah.
And then The Farewell feels like there's Asian characters and they're speaking in their native language, but not necessarily about that, so.
Well, I'm not going to get into it. And it's not even nominated, so it's not even relevant. It's been a question. It kind of reminds me of who's the lead actress in The Favorite. I'm like, well, who's the protagonist?
Right.
And apparently the protagonist does not equal the lead. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah. And anyone you ask, it'll be someone different. They'll give you a different answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think The Farewell is a pretty big. That one I'm pretty disappointed about. I think anytime they can incorporate more independent films in here, we did get a couple sprinkled throughout independent films. I know The Lighthouse picked up a cinematography nod, of course. Mm-hmm. And Greta Gerwig's not independent per se, but she does have a lot of support from on the A24 front. So I mean, there's there's some concessions there for sure. But I think thinking of the Lighthouse actually. Could just Academy give Willem Dafoe an Oscar?
Willem Dafoe. I mean, we talked about this with the Florida Project.
Yeah.
It was like that movie should have been nominated for everything, but it was like at the very least give Willem Dafoe the Oscar.
He got he did get a nomination.
He got a nom, but he didn't get the Oscar.
He gets nominated a lot and but he never really has a chance. That's the other thing.
Yeah, he's always the dark horse, and it's like that'll never happen.
Man, he's just fantastic. He gives one of what I feel like is probably one of the most challenging monologues I've ever seen executed on screen in The Lighthouse. And I'm not saying, I just he didn't breathe. Like he goes on for 5 minutes.
Yep.
And it's just mesmerizing, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what a shame there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we mentioned Greta Gerwig from the director's seat. She did get screenplay for Little Women. So that's, again, you and I talk about this a lot, like a concession. Well, they're like, well, politically, we want to give these people directors, so the least we can do is give this person a screenplay.
A screenplay nom, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So,
well, we haven't really talked about the biggest snub, at least for me, is Jenny from the Block, who will be performing later today, who was snubbed for Hustlers. I've been vying for that movie since it came out, but
that's right. We're recording this on Super Bowl Sunday. I guess there's something about a sports and a ball, and they're throwing it around.
Yeah, and then J-Lo's there.
And J-Lo's there. Yeah, I mean that's really what I'm tuning in to watch J-Lo.
Exactly.
No, that's a good point. Hustlers is a movie that made enough of a splash. It made decent money for a film of that distribution.
Yeah.
It was a small. Was that A24?
No, I don't think it was.
Okay, but it was still one of the more indie. It didn't get a major studio push.
Sure.
I should put it that way. And J-Lo coming out of the woodwork to deliver just jaw dropping great performance. Just own every time she's on the screen, she just soaks up all of the attention. She was so good, powerful performance, and not a nomination.
Yeah, very committed, but I also feel like she was, and it was also just a layered role for her. She's not normally known for having projects that have characters that are that dynamic. So in her being carrying her own with it was it was good. The first time you'd seen her that good probably since God. I mean, people say Selena, but there was The Cell, and then there was also Out of Sight. The three ones that come to mind.
The Cell, though.
I know.
I gotta rewatch.
Underrated. Very underrated.
I gotta watch that one again.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that is a whole other podcast. So if you think that J-Lo was great in The Cell, she probably is.
Yeah.
That movie's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, I remember it being pretty bad. I haven't watched it in probably 15 years. So
it's one of those ones that have sprout back up in the years. But
yeah. A couple of victory notes because we always go about the snubs. And do you have any other snubs you want to know? Any particularly noteworthy ones?
Probably, I don't want to butcher her name. Zhao Zuzhen from The Farewell as well.
Yes, the grandmother who in China is
a big deal.
A big deal. Yeah.
I thought she was great. She stood out to me, maybe even a little bit more than Awkwafina, honestly, in that film.
I think so.
Who was also snubbed.
Awkwafina was also snubbed. So The Farewell was completely
just
snubbed.
The Farewell in general, and J-Lo.
And the Farewell and J-Lo and Willem Dafoe. But Willem Dafoe, everyone just expects that anymore. Sure. So, yeah. So always snubs. I do feel like as a whole, like you said, not a lot of surprises, but I also, when the nominations came out, the ones we just mentioned were the ones that stood out. I was like, wow, really? But also, I don't feel offended by, last year, I know First Reformed was you and I's favorite film of the year, and one of my favorite films of the last decade, easily. And for Ethan Hawke, who just between him and Paul Schrader, that was their movie, and he did such an incredible career-defining performance as Reverend Toller. Not to get nominated, I was that's insulting.
I didn't think he was going to win, but I was like, there's no way that this performance isn't going to be recognized. So.
Yeah. I'm still upset about it.
Yeah.
Every time I think about that, I just think of that moment in the movie when he puts the church sign up, "Will God forgive us?"
Yes.
Every time I think about that in the Academy, I'm like,
"That's one."
First Reformed. Yeah. And then of course, but yeah. On that same note, though, it was even though it did get Paul Schrader did get the screenplay nomination, but Green Book ultimately beat Black Klansman and Adapted. Do I have that correctly?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I
just remember that one of the screenplay categories went to Green Book, and then First Reformed didn't get it, and it was a bummer. So on the screenplay, victory things I'm happy to see here. Sure. I'll just go down that.
Sure.
Maybe I'm not surprised by, but also I wasn't sure they'd make it just because of weird politicking. Knives Out got an original screenplay nomination. I am Ryan Johnson here all day, all night. I love everything he does.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the true gems, one of the greatest like up and coming filmmakers working in Hollywood today.
Right.
Kind of slowly working his way through the studio system, but still kind of making movies he wants to make. So super excited to see him get that nom. Also, Parasite getting all the love it got. Again, normally related to The Farewell, anytime there's like that many subtitles, it's like best foreign film I guess international film.
Right.
But not this time. And I think we also I shouldn't say it's not something I'm like dancing about or anything, but I thought it was nice to see Jojo Rabbit get some love.
A lot of love.
A film I did not expect to make it anywhere near the Academy Awards, so that was pretty neat. Yeah, I think those are kind of the high level ones. Oh, one more snub, and I'm not going to go into it too in depth here, but an animated feature category. I'm a big fan. There's a director from Japan, so he does anime. His name's Makoto Shinkai. He did Your Name a couple years ago, which was like far and away one of my favorite animated films of the last 10 years. Thought it was wonderful. He had a new film. It just came stateside like a couple weeks ago called Weathering with You, but it did meet the parameters to get an Oscar nomination for 2019.
Yeah.
And totally snubbed. And I thought it was, having just seen it, I was like, I haven't seen Claws, but I thought it was notably better than the other nominations. So there's that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on that note, Laron, I don't know, is there anything else we want to, like, predictions, before we get into the awards, is there anything else you're like, ooh, maybe we'll see? Are we going to have like a drinking game or any left field like things that are going to happen we're not expecting?
Sadly, I don't think so. No, I think for the most part, from the nominees that are here, I feel like I can predict each category almost, but we'll see. I'd love to be wrong.
Is it that the Academy has gotten more predictable or that we've gotten savvier in watching all the Guild stuff? I ask myself this question every year.
It's possible.
Because I didn't start paying attention to the Guild until about 5 or so years ago, and that's when I noticed that my Oscar tally got much stronger.
Right. And the governing body that's watching, I mean, they're viewing these films in the Academy. I mean, obviously that's been changing over the years as they've implemented some diversity incentives and what have you. So you're seeing incremental changes, like we saw Moonlight win, but then we saw Green Book win. So it's just, it goes up and down, like we see the films that we want to see nominated for the most part. They don't always win though.
Right. All right. Well, I think that'll about do it on Snub's bold predictions. I'm kind of with you. I hope something crazy happens, but if there's anything I've just had to come to terms with, it's that the Oscars are not about taking risks. It's about patting ourselves on the back. Which again, maybe this is an abusive relationship thing you and I have talked about before. Yeah. I don't even expect the best movie to win anymore. It's more about like the idea of the Oscars. I am actually generally expecting to be disappointed. But I just love the activity of coming together, celebrating movies, watching with friends, talking about it. All that stuff's great. But ladies and gentlemen, just a friendly reminder that the best movie rarely wins Best Picture. Alfred Hitchcock, one of the most influential directors of the last 100 years, also never won an Oscar. So just keep that in mind when you think about the Oscars being the be-all, end-all. With that said, let's go ahead and jump right into the awards. And I want to start us off with it's sort of the crossover between the technical and the artistic awards, which is cinematography. So we've got The Irishman, Rodrigo Prieto, Joker, Lawrence Sher, The Lighthouse, Jareen Blanche. I'm going to butcher these names. Jareen Blanche, 1917, Roger Deakins, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Robert Richardson, Laron Chapman.
Yes.
What do you think?
This is a good list. I think 3 stand out to me in particular. This is one of the categories where I actually do think Joker shines. I actually thought it was very well shot. But I think probably the standout to me in terms of holistically would probably be The Lighthouse, because visually, I feel like that film is just, the aesthetic of it is one of the main draws for me. The story was a little, left me a little wanting when I saw it, but I can't get some of the images in that film out of my head. So
absolutely stunning film.
And then of course 1917, which is an aesthetic wonder in its own right. So.
Of those, which one do you like? Which one do you think is going to win?
The one I like is The Lighthouse, but I think Deakins will probably take home cinematography this year.
You know, it's funny because for the longest time we were Roger Deakins is never going to win. He was the
nominated.
John Williams of cinematography, except for he doesn't win. And then he finally, it was a Blade Runner. I think he got the award finally. Stunning film. And now I feel like he's going to just get awards.
Just get awards now, and it's not going to be. You got it now, so
yeah, because I do fall right in line with you. So yeah, I think this is a really strong category for me overall. I think all of these films look exceptional. I think this is Joker of the categories that I think it's worthy of the win on here. This one's definitely one of the maybe 5 that I think it's worthy of the nomination. Lighthouse, of course, I don't think it has a chance at winning, but I do really admire that movie. I think it looks beautiful and does a lot of really cool experimental things.
Yeah.
I don't think it has a chance at winning, but even just the nomination for that movie, I think, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And then, Roger Deakins, 1917. I think The Irishman and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood look really good, but just thinking about them, there's nothing that in particular that stands out
visually.
It's really, really good and really polished. And but like, as far as the visual language, it doesn't really do anything for me that like just makes me think it's that original. So 1917, one thing I will say about that movie is, and I think that is going to win, I feel like about 95% on 1917, it's the whole movie is basically a long take with a big break in the middle. At least that's what they're trying to disguise it as, and it works largely. And what's cool about that is Roger Deakins is known for very stunning cinematography. So you would think in that sort of technical experiment, it would be really hard to land some of the more like artistic, stunning visual wonder shots that he's known for. And they do it. At least 2 that come to mind in the movie. I'm just like, how did they do that?
How do they accomplish that?
Yeah. So I get shout out. So I'm never going to be mad about a Roger Deakins win. So save us bet, you and I on the same page.
Roger Deakins.
Roger Deakins. Okay. All right. This is going to take us to original screenplay. So for original screenplay, we have Knives Out, Rian Johnson, Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach, 1917, Sam Mendes, Christy Wilson Cairns, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino, and then Parasite, Bong Joon-ho, and Jin Won-han. I have to say, Laron, my early prediction was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is going to come and sweep because everyone loves everyone involved. It's Tarantino. He's a great director, great writer. People love his scripts. You've got Brad and Leo in there, Hollywood darlings, on top of the entire Margot Robbie, and then you've got the entire huge supporting cast. Lots of very well-liked actors. Sure. And then from the producer's standpoint, just the whole like celebration of Hollywood. I was like,
Hollywood loves movies about themselves. Yeah, so
exactly. So it seemed like a safe bet, but honestly, looking at this right now, my favorite's probably Knives Out, tied with Parasite. I like both of them equally for different reasons, and funny enough, I think they're both about very similar things, just kind of executed in a much different way. I like them; they're both kind of funny in their execution, so I like both of those quite a bit. I think Parasite has the edge, though. What do you think?
Parasite would be my choice. I still feel like it'll probably be a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood here.
Think so?
Yes, I think Parasite is probably. I mean, I think the best thing we can expect for it and hope for is the Best Picture win. Maybe unlikely, but not improbable. Second here for me is honestly Marriage Story. I think Marriage Story was one of the strongest elements there too. Was the writing between from Noah Baumbach. I think those scenes with him, with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, particularly the most iconic one that we can refer to, the one where they had that argument in the living room.
Oh yeah.
There's just so many layers to the way he writes his work. It goes back and forth between nuance and theatricality in the same moment. They're very dense. It's really complex. The writing's really complex, and he also shows humanity to both sides of them. So they're very layered characters. So I think personally, it would be Parasite. My second favorite choice would be Marriage Story, but I think the one that the Academy will go with will be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And I'm glad we started with the screenplay categories. I kind of hope you're wrong. I mean, I don't know though. Tarantino's
I do too.
and again, I think Tarantino is a great script, and I actually think it's one of my favorite scripts from him of the last 10 years. I like that he's kind of sentimental, especially coming off of the Hateful Eight. I just felt like it was a really good time for that.
Yeah,
and he brought the right actors on board. Anyway, but no, I think that's a safe bet.
Yep.
So I'm gonna hedge my bets on Parasite. You're going for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Again, very strong category. I think all of these were great scripts. 1917 probably being the weakest.
One of these things is not like the other, and I would say 1917. There's probably 12 words in that movie, so I don't really know.
It's not really about the script. It's so weird. It's like because getting to adapt here, it's the same thing with Joker. It's like there wasn't really much of a. It's so basic. I don't know how you nominate the script, but anyway, we will see. So yeah, a strong category. Let's go on to the adapted screenplay. So this one is going to have The Irishman, Steve Zalian, Jojo Rabbit, Taika Waititi, Joker, Todd Phillips and Scott Silver, Little Women, Greta Gerwig, and The Two Popes, Anthony McCartan. Oh, this is another really strong category, save for Joker. Which could win. Laron, what is your... Okay, so starts off, which ones do you like the best of this bunch, and which one's going to take home the trophy?
My favorite's Little Women, Greta Gerwig. I think she took that text and did something very unique with it, because the script itself, obviously it has existing source material, but watching the film, she's given all of these women and all these characters kind of an agency and a voice that was kind of not present in the previous adaptations of it. In many ways, it's a love letter, to the author, because she was able to give them the voice maybe that she at the time herself was not able, to do, even in her own work. So I think the strongest one in here would have been Greta Gerwig for me. I think Jojo Rabbit's a strong one. The Two Popes is a strong one. I think the second, the one that's probably generating the most attention, probably The Irishman here. Just off the momentum of the film in general. But so I would say Little Women would be my personal choice, but I think that The Irishman will probably be what the Academy goes with.
Okay. I think those are good predictions. So I am of the same mind with you here. I will say The Irishman. I'm glad you're picking The Irishman, because I'm actually going to double down on Little Women. That's probably my favorite. And I do feel like this will be, especially with all the backlash about her not getting the director nom, I think this might be a way of saying, no, we think Greta Gerwig's a great artist. Here's your script. And I do think the way that she wrote and edited, the film was written and directed and edited. I think all of it works together really beautifully and makes me think about that work in a completely different light than I ever had before. Just the way that your life rhymes even in different chapters, and really tells a totally different type of story than if you watch it chronologically.
Absolutely.
So I think a terrific script from her. I loved it. I think it has a strong chance. But that said, I think The Irishman's a strong likelihood too. This is probably the only award I think The Irishman has a very strong chance at winning.
I agree.
It's very strange because that movie also got nominated for, I think it was 10.
Yeah.
And it could very well go home empty-handed, which is again strange. But
I think Irishman and Marriage Story will both be two that we see that were really well received, but probably will walk away empty-handed.
Yeah, I think there's a high likelihood for Marriage Story. I almost think there's very unlikely.
Very unlikely chance.
Which, again, terrific film. And I just think it's so weird. Netflix has been trying so hard to garner, like, the Oscar awards. It's kind of that weird way of, like, saying, no, we are a real film studio or whatever. And we did see that with Roma last year, which was a terrific film and a great victory. Clearly they're doing something right, because, again, when we get to the animated category, they actually have more nominations than Disney, which is... very surprising. So they're doing something right, but something about they're not quite getting there with the award stuff. But you would think, though, hey, we're gonna hire Martin Scorsese with the Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino. That seems like surefire Oscar gold, and sure enough, it gets the nominations. But I don't think it's a front runner.
The one thing that the success of the Netflix is that they're basically giving people a chance to see the film. More people are seeing these movies than probably like you and I, of course, would go seek out these movies anyway. But with them being readily available on Netflix, where we have mainstream audiences seeing some of these films, so they're actually an active part of the viewership whenever when they're watching the Oscars this year. But
and I don't know. I just think that if Netflix could work better with the theaters, that's the big holdup. And I feel like Amazon's done it pretty well, generally speaking. And Netflix, though, they can't work out an agreement, because that's the thing about The Irishman. It was only in theaters here in Oklahoma City for like a week.
That's true.
And I know it's making some rounds now in those big showcase events, but that's a movie that really should be seen on the big screen. And I would say the same for Marriage Story as well. But so Laron, I'm going to stick with Little Women for my pick and my favorite. I do think The Irishman has a strong chance, and it's probably my second favorite on the list as well. But again, Love the shout out to Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit. I think that was a really inventive script, and I think a very tough egg to crack in 2019, 2020. So kudos to
love of Hitler. It's like a story about Hitler. A kid loves Hitler, and also it winds up being one of the sweetest movies I've seen all year.
Yeah, right. Well, it's funny when you think about like Joker. You're like, was this really the right time for this movie to come out? I'm not saying it's bad. Trying to have us empathize with this like white dude who's
mass murderer,
gonna go mass murder some people. Maybe not the best time for that. And I would have, on its face, you would have said the same thing about a movie that's asking you to sympathize with Nazi Germany, and you're like,
maybe not.
Maybe not, but the movie does it.
Somehow
works.
It worked.
It worked. Yeah. All right, and this is going to take us to the animated feature. Now we're going to hit animated feature, and then we're going to move into like a rapid fire round where we tackle some of the. Maybe the awards that are a little not less important, but maybe a little less prominent, prestigious, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
More technical siding things. So the last one here is animated feature. So the nominations are How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, I Lost My Body, Claws, Missing Link, and Toy Story 4. This is an interesting category. So Netflix has 2 nominations, I Lost My Body, that was kind of an indie film, and then Claws. I have, full disclosure, I have not seen Claws yet. I've seen the other 4. And side note, I did have a very in-depth discussion about this category with Harold Storey on the Toons podcast that by the time you're listening to this should be out on his podcast. So I recommend you go check that out if you want my full thoughts. Laron Chapman, what did you think of this category? What were your picks?
I'm surprised by this category. I mean, mainly because for the omission of Frozen 2. Not that I was completely enamored with it, but that it just seems like kind of like a shoo-in to be nominated, if not win,
Well, the first one was so beloved. The second one was well-received. Made a lot of money.
Made a lot of money, like you said. I guess it just didn't enrapture people the way people anticipated. It's also a sequel. It's just one of those things, too, most of these are. I mean, How to Train Your Dragon, Toy Story 4, so maybe we're just a little fatigued on, some of these. And so it's nice to have some unorthodox animated films, in the mix here, like Missing Link and Claws and I Lost My Body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are your picks on these?
I honestly still think, though, that the Academy will probably go with Toy Story 4. If I'm going with my gut, Toy Story 4, but I know Missing Link has been getting a lot of attention.
It got the Golden Globe.
It
was very surprising when...
And I saw it recently, and actually, it was cute.
Yeah.
I thought it was cute.
It's a good movie. So, I'm going to go ahead and just throw this out there, too. Of course, like I said earlier, Weathering with You was a film that I felt like should have been in this category and probably should have won. That said, I will always put all of my support behind a Studio Leica movie. So, Studio Leica, who did Missing Link, also did Kubo and the Two Strings a couple years ago, one of my favorite movies of that year. They did Coraline, they did Paranorman. They are the only people who are pushing the envelope on stop motion, a different, and I just really like that they're doing that. And when I say pushing it, I'm not just saying that they're doing it. No, they're like innovating in the space in ways that consistently blow my mind. Whenever I see one of their movies, again, I don't know if the Missing Link story was quite as good as some of their past scripts, but I enjoyed it. It was nice, fun, sweet. But it's the fact that there are so many times when I'm watching it where I'm like, how did they do that? Like, it just blows your mind when you think about it. And then you're like, surely there's... because it's not CG, they found some practical way to do with the sets they built.
Yeah.
So you're like, wow, how did they do that? I can't believe it. Well, there had to be some like really easy thing they did, and then you Google it or whatever, and then you figure out how they did it, and you're like, wow, these guys are operating creatively on a level that I can't dream to reach. Like, they just know that craft so well that they get to live in that space. They really innovate. I remember like the special features on the Kubo and the Two Strings Blu-ray. They were talking about how they did like the waves for the Japanese looking water stuff. Oh my gosh, it just blows my mind. So
because animation is so vast, and I think the Academy has always been pretty predictable with choosing just one type of animation. Because you have the stop action, you have several years now. I think now it was the Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like that level of invention. With it. And anime as well. That's another thing too that doesn't seem to find its way in here as often either.
They really like Pixar.
They like
Pixar and they like DreamWorks, that is typically trying to be like Pixar.
Yeah.
So, I'm with you, and it's always a bummer. I will also say that last year bucked the trend. Spider-Verse did take home animated feature, and that was a very different type of animated feature.
Absolutely.
Very surprising. So I'm hoping with
and
that.
It came late in the game, too, so it's kind of surprising that it kind of swept there at the end.
Very late in the game, yeah. It is my hope that that they keep that trend going and pick Missing Link. So personal favorite is Missing Link. I think if I was a betting man, yeah, Toy Story 4 seems like the most likely. I have heard there's some really positive love towards Claus, I guess, but haven't seen that movie, so I don't have enough of an opinion on it to like say either way.
Same.
So yeah, Toy Story 4, probably going to take it. Yeah. All right, Laron. So now that we've hit that group of categories, let's move on to our rapid fire round 1. So there's going to be 3 rapid fire rounds, as well as kind of 3 of these more prestige categories. First one is following up on the animated feature is animated short. Now we're going to so the next really this entire section we're covering all the shorts and docs. Just going to throw this out there. This is probably the area, at least for me, and I think Laron too, we're the least well read of these films. So animated short film. I can't even pronounce the first one. Desera. Hair Love, Kitbull, Memorable, Sister.
The only one I've even heard of on this category is Hair Love.
So Hair Love, I think that's a safe bet. You've heard about it?
That's the one.
That sometimes that's all you need, Laron.
Go with the title.
Yeah.
The title that jumps out.
If you've heard of it, you know. Hair Love sounds like a safe bet. Let's go on to Best Documentary Feature. Now, I have heard of 2 of these. I have, 3 of these, but I've only seen none of them. Wow, I suck. I'm usually pretty good at getting a couple of these. All right, so American Factory, The Cave, The Edge of Democracy, For Sama, and Honeyland.
Yeah, so the only one in here that I can even give any nugget of insight into would probably be Honeyland. I can say that it was well shot.
Well shot? Do you feel like it's something the Academy would pick?
Possibly.
Okay, possibly. All right. I'm going to go out there and say American Factory because I think it was produced by Obama. Yeah. And the Academy
it has a more political leaning. So it's that they like those kind of narratives.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Unless it's last year, then they're like, we like feel good movies.
No politics whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm picking American Factory purely on the fact that Obama produced it, and the Academy likes Obama. That's not a political statement anyway. I'm just saying that's an observation.
Do not place your bets on any of our votes on these categories.
No, please do not. Best documentary short subject: In Absence, Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone, Life Overtakes Me, St. Louis Superman, Walk, Run, Cha-Cha. Walk, Run, Cha-Cha-Cha. I don't know. That should be how they read it on the show, honestly. LeBron, which one are you going to pick?
I'm going to go with Cha-Cha just because you did that.
Cha-Cha did that. All right. I'm going to say Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone because that sounds like a really hard thing to do. Yeah. Okay. I hope we're right about half of these so we can just...
You know what? Some of the categories that I've surprisingly gotten right are the ones I guessed on, and it's normally in these 4 categories.
This is where this is where I get to these categories every year. It's like, is this what everyone else feels like when they're trying to put together their ballots? You know? Best live action short film: Brotherhood, NEFTA Football Club, The Neighbor's Window, Saria, A Sister. Well, we got one about Brotherhood and we got one about A Sister, so I feel like those are strong leads.
Give the ladies a chance. A Sister. Let's go with A Sister.
Let's vote for The Sister. All right, A Sister. Thank you. That'll conclude rapid fire round number 1, where you got the most informed picks you're going to get this entire podcast. Yeah. All right, that's going to take us on to original score. So we are back on the Prestige train. And original score, I love this category.
I do too.
I honestly think this is an interesting bunch of movies. I don't think half of these deserve to be on here. But hey, we're going to touch on another area. I think Joker being the first one. I'm not even going to try to pretend that composer's names, but it is a woman, and if she won, it would be a big deal. There are very, very few women composers working in Hollywood, so to get the Oscar nomination is great. And I actually can say confidently, looking at this list, I would be happy if she won, because I think it's a great score. Haunting, chilling. Little Women, Alexandre Desplat, who is basically Jordan Williams status at this point. Marriage Story, Randy Newman. 1917, Thomas Newman. Oh my God, the Newmans are going at it this year. All right. And then Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker by John Williams. Listen. I was talking to, friend of the show, soundtrack co-host Alexandra Bohannon about the Star Wars Rise of Skywalker score. I don't think there's actually any new music in that movie.
Really?
It doesn't. We listen like it's all just reduxes of the older songs. That there's not new.
Yeah,
none of the new characters really have a clear
material.
theme. They rehash, race, and I'm not saying it's bad, but
Right.
it's all music we've heard before.
Right.
And they actually, for the first time ever, did use the Star Wars opening crawl in the actual movie. That was an interesting choice. But I mean, giving John Williams this award, I know he's John Williams, and John Williams is John Williams.
Be for this one.
But it's like giving him a Star Wars greatest. It's like giving you an award for a greatest hits album.
Yeah.
So 1917 I thought was a solid score. I honestly don't think it was that memorable. Randy Newman Marriage Story was pretty solid. Again, not one that I'm like thinking about, but I know he had a good song in there. Loved Little Women and loved Joker. Those are my two favorites. I think Joker's going to take it.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with this.
I will take that.
Yeah. It's very strong.
It's a tie. It really is a tie between me and Little Women because I was just listening to Little Women before you arrived for the recording, and I was like, this is a great little score.
I do disagree with you about Thomas Newman, 1917, but just because I'm a sucker for Thomas Newman, because
he's good.
He did the score for my favorite movie, American Beauty, and the whole time I was listening to it, I was like, "Is this Thomas Newman?" I was like, because I love it, it must be Thomas Newman, So, but
there's okay. I don't want to sell it too short. There's a couple of movements in there. I noticed. I actually noticed. So I saw that movie twice. I didn't notice the score at all the first time. I'll be honest. Second time, I did. It did sink in. I really like the core theme that he rolls in. I like it when it gets. There's a lot of those moments gets really quiet and intimate, but when it gets really big and that's pretty neat. Kind of feels like in that way. It kind of feels like a more traditional score, which I do like. Yeah. Okay, so I take it back. 1917 has a pretty solid score.
Okay. But I think Joker. I think you're right. I think Joker probably has all the momentum here. For sure.
Yeah, it's one,
and it's worthy. It's really good. It's something that does stand out about it.
Yep. Absolutely, wholeheartedy agree. So we're putting our bets on Joker. On to visual effects. So this is another category. Disney just owns the category here. Okay, Avengers Endgame. I think it's the only nomination it got, if I'm correct. The Irishman, 1917. I think I must have. There's a. This can't be right.
The Lion King is on there. Yes.
That was 1994, though, right?
Yeah, no, not that one.
Wait, was there another Lion King?
There was another Lion King. We don't talk about it.
Well, I saw the 3D mock trailer they made. Like I thought that was kind of a joke. Oh wait, that was a real thing.
That was a real thing.
It made It made over $1 billion.
Yeah,
and even though the mouths looked like shit, it's gonna win the best. Okay, all right. Sorry guys, I really hate the Lion King. Lion King, and then Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. This is a tough category because I don't really feel strongly about any of these.
Honestly,
can we put Leica? Can we put Leica in there? I want Missing Link. I'd vote for that for best special effects.
There you go. Just because the Avengers is the only, it's the only nomination it got, and it was a big film this year. And it's special effects heavy. Obviously, that's front and center. I'd put my money on that.
I think it's a safe bet. Controversial statement. I don't think it's that controversial, but I'm just going to throw this out there. And I think you're right. I think it will win because I think this is the only film it's nominated for. And it is, highest grossing film of all time and unprecedented type of film we've ever seen. Sure. I think it does deserve recognition for sure. But I just got to say, I don't think most of the Avengers movies look very good.
Okay.
They don't look bad, but they just look, I don't know.
Yeah.
They look like they look.
Yeah.
There's nothing particularly striking about that.
That's fair.
I think the most striking Marvel films are like the Doctor Strange, Black Panther.
We like them. Obviously, visual effects is a huge component of it, but it's not like when we saw, say, The Matrix for the first time, where immediately there's something very striking about the visuals that you say, I've never seen anything like this before. And that could be because there's 20 of the movies, so we've gotten tired of them.
We're oversaturated. And again, I don't want to take away from the work that goes into it. I just know. And even Black Panther, it's the CG. The CG generally, at best, looks serviceable, and then at worst, actually looks like really bad.
Yeah,
and I think the same. I think it's consistent here with Endgame as it is with most Marvel films. Not to knock it. Again, I know there's a lot of people work very hard. There was some great think. I may even link one of these notes. There were some great think pieces when Black Panther came out. Why did the end of this movie look like trash? But kind of going through, and it was really an interesting deep dive into how Marvel executes VFX in their films and how they're like rushed on these crazy deadlines and they're outsourcing to all these different VFX houses overseas, and that's why they kind of like that usually tends to be a pressure point for a lot of their movies is when they get really CG heavy. Anyway, sure, let's give it best special effects because it's not that I hated it, and I think it deserves some love, and I guess it wouldn't really make sense to fit in anywhere else in the Oscars show, so give it to it. I guess for my personal pick, The Irishman, 1917, they're both, again,
it's not a great category.
No.
For sure. These wouldn't be the films I would say reflected, the best in this particular category, but
1917,
given what there is,
1917 made me go wow, but that was more for like the editing, cinematography.
That's what I would say. Yeah, the editing and the cinematography, not necessarily the visual effects, but
and the Irishman even they did a lot of cool stuff with VFX, but I don't think it was.
Yeah,
I mean, I know it was expensive, and I think the fact that they did it for a full feature film versus a couple of scenes, huge deal. And the fact that I was not distracted by it most of the time was great. But I mean, there's still cracks there.
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
So, all right. So, if you're betting, go ahead. Avengers Endgame. What's the line they said in the trailer? They said in like all the trailers. Crap, I totally forgot about the trailers already. Did that catch the tagline? I can't remember.
And beat.
All right, so we can't remember the Avengers, the biggest movie of all time that came out less than a year ago. We've totally forgotten about it altogether. But hey, let's give it an Oscar. All right, supporting actor. Tom Hanks for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Whatever It Takes. That was it. There you go.
Whatever it takes.
There he goes.
Whatever it
Pick
takes.
Avengers Endgame. Whatever it takes. Okay. Supporting actor, Tom Hanks, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Anthony Hopkins, The Two Popes. Al Pacino, The Irishman. Joe Pesci, The Irishman. And Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think this is an exceptional category. I want to give them all Oscars. I think they're all that good. But unfortunately, only one man can take home the trophy. I think you and I are aligned, but I want to get your take here. Who would you pick personally?
Who would I pick personally?
Yes.
I picked Brad Pitt. I think Brad Pitt was fantastic in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I also thought he was great in Ad Astra, which I think he should have been nominated. More on that later. But I think that collectively he had a great year, and he hasn't won it. And I think he's turned in consistently good work in his career, and it's time for him to get his gold. So obviously, the everything, The Irishman, there wasn't a bad performance in that movie. I mean, even Anna Paquin with her one line was great. So I think that the only issue with this is that I think Al Pacino and Joe Pesci they'll probably cancel each other out.
A reminder to listeners is preferential ballots. So if someone wants to pick The Irishman, they have two choices, not one. This is the same reason that we probably Amy Adams probably lost the Oscar a couple years ago because she was up for two films, not one film. So just know that like sometimes being nominated for more than one thing actually could hurt your chances to win. So I agree. I don't think,
and that's even across categories too. So like if you're in a supporting and you're in in a lead, the momentum there, even though you're not in the same category, like you'll draw the energy, like, oh, I voted for this one, so I won't vote for this one in this category. But especially if it's in the same category. Yeah,
absolutely. And okay, I would say, my personal pick here, it's tough. I really like Al Pacino in The Irishman. I know Joe Pesci came out of retirement. He was also incredible playing against type.
Sure.
That's they're both great. It's more like me picking the one I personally liked more, but they're both incredible performances. I don't know. I just kind of wrote Al Pacino off, probably over 20 years ago. I think Heat was like the last movie I saw him in when I was like, he's doing some cool stuff. And that was in the 90s.
That was a while ago.
And there's probably something in there I forgot about. But, he hasn't done anything. So I just kind of assumed, and similar to Robert De Niro, you kind of just assume, well, these guys haven't really done what they're good at in a long time.
At this level,
can they still because they've been working on films that seem like cash grabs or family film, like there's all sorts of weird.
Well, that's I think was the excitement about The Irishman is like we've seen a Martin Scorsese gangster film, but there was something about, even though he's bringing back his regular players, all of these actors are giving their best work in the last 10 years. So so it was like a refreshing reunion for everyone involved. But
and I think it's an outstanding film, easily one of the best films of the year. I think if I was picking a personal, I'd roll towards Al Pacino, just because, man, when he's on screen as Jimmy Hoffa and he's rolling, like he's got it all. And he's not just doing one thing in that movie. He's doing a multitude of things. He's playing this guy who's kind of this great charismatic leader who is also kind of emotionally unhinged, and seeing him have to balance that is really interesting. But yeah, I think that's my personal pick, but only just so slightly, because I do think Brad Pitt is incredible, and you're right, he does deserve the gold. I think it was a terrific performance from him. I think that's a great movie all around. I love that movie. I think, at least for my money, my favorite moments that I keep like referencing in my mind or with my girlfriend or something like that are all the Brad Pitt moments.
Yeah. Yeah, he outshined Leo, honestly.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Anthony Hopkins was great in The Two Popes. I mean, that was a very performance heavy show. I mean, so Tom Hanks is always great.
Tom Hanks and Mr. Rogers just seems like too perfect. America's Sweetheart played one of the sweetest humans that in recent human history that we know of. Yeah, I think those are things to think about for sure.
The only thing I would have liked to have seen in this cat, obviously we mentioned Willem Dafoe. Shia LaBeouf was fantastic, I thought, in Honey Boy. If I was the only thing I would take away from that film, I think he was great. But
he was great.
Daniel Craig would have been another great option for Knives Out.
I'm just going to throw that out there. I really hope that it seems like very likely there's going to be a sequel of some sort or a follow-up to Knives Out with Daniel Craig.
Him doing more cases.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Laron, because that is seriously, I know comedy often doesn't get the same love with the Academy as drama, but man, he is so funny in that movie. I think that's a bit of a snub too. Shia LaBeouf's great. I think Shia LaBeouf's going to have another day.
Sure.
I do think that was a very personal performance for him, and I think he killed it. He was amazing. But
so you're going with your personal choice though would be
Al Pacino.
But
just barely. Brad Pitt it's almost neck and neck, but I think Brad Pitt's almost certainly got this in the bag. He's won all the Guild Awards. He's got all the media attention. He's killing it. He has to, I swear, have you been watching his awards acceptance speeches? I swear he's got a writer that he hired to write, because his jokes are like flawless every time.
Yes. It's like butter.
Yeah. Oh, I remember the thing, the Plan B Productions thing, well, obviously to Ad Astra, but also a movie of mine that I don't think made it anywhere on this list, The Last Black Man from San Francisco. Yeah. Terrific film.
Very great film.
That his studio produced, and again, anything I can do to give that movie a little bit of love and shout out. So let's move on to supporting actress. So we've got
no J-Lo.
In fact, what's the point? What's the point? We got Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell, Laura Dern, Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit. By the way, Scarlett Johansson got nominated twice this year. Mm-hmm. Florence Pugh, Little Women, Margot Robbie, Bombshell. This is a really good category as well.
Solid category. Minus the omissions, it's a solid category.
Yes, correct. There are missing things, but I don't think. I mean, if I was going to take two people out, it would probably be Margot Robbie and Kathy Bates, but I don't think neither of them are bad. I think they're both pretty good in these movies. But I mean, Laura Dern in Marriage Story is great. She's certainly the favorite. I think she's almost certainly got it. I don't know of this list though. I think I actually probably like Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh's performances a little bit more. But I want Laura Dern to get it. It's like her chance. Yeah. You know, it's like you want that for her. I just thought
it's like a career one for her.
Yes,
she's done consistently great work over her career. Now it's just her time. She's overdue for it, and it's a good role. I don't know if it's my favorite that she's ever done, but it's a solid one, and she's nominated. So. Why not?
Yeah.
But I think personal favorite choice would be Florence Pugh.
Yeah. She's great. She made a historically extremely unlikable character.
Very human.
Very human, very sympathetic. Like to the point to where, again, I think this is a testament to both this performance and also Greta Gerwig, the way she kind of restructured the story. Yeah. It made you really feel for her in a way that historically...
But they never gave the character Amy redeeming qualities, and in this moment, like we understand her bad choices, and that was a refreshing departure from the other text. So
I know Greg Gerwig has cited this in several interviews, but the whole idea that if I can't be the best, I don't want to do it. Like so, she swings for the fences. She swings for the fences, and is not a great person along the way. But like you feel for it a little bit more. Yeah, it makes it more human.
You understand her motivations, even if you don't agree with them.
Well, and again, the way they kind of paint her as her feeling like she always lived in the shadow of her older sister. That, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff, it works really, really well. And I think Florence Pugh turning a performance like this,
Midsommar earlier this year.
Oh yeah, she's on fire. And I think she's another like Saoirse Ronan, where she's just going to start showing up at the Oscars like every year. It's
a party.
Yeah, so you think Laura Dern also has it?
Yeah. I think that's a solid lock.
I think you and I are on the same page. I'm also picking Florence Pugh for favorite, but I think Laura Dern, that's basically a lock at this point. I would be shocked if someone else took it. All right, so that will wrap up our round 2 of kind of the more prestigious awards. Let's go ahead and move on to rapid fire round 2. Bing, bing. All right, so sound editing. Ford v. Ferrari. Joker, 1917. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. Laron Chapman, what you got?
I'm going to go with 1917, also because it's a war film. It was also very good. I think in general, almost historically, they go with the war film here, and it's a solid one, and sound is a huge component of it. So I think 1917 is probably the strongest one in that category.
Yeah. I think it's the strongest. It's going to take a bunch of awards. Yeah, let's go ahead and throw support behind it. Part of me wants to say like Ford v. Ferrari, just because it's like, what else is it going to win? But
yeah.
I don't know. 1917 seems like a safe bet. That takes us to sound mixing. Now, let's remind the people the difference between sound editing and sound mixing, because this is a question I get from a lot of people when I'm watching award shows, of people who aren't as familiar, and it is confusing if you don't know what you're looking at. So sound editing are the people who actually place the sound in the film. Mm-hmm. Like they sync it all up, they put it together with the video. Sound mixing are the people who kind of create the sounds that you mix the sounds together.
They generated all this stuff.
Yes, yep. So for sound editing, we're saying 1917. For sound mixing, we've got Ad Astra, Ford v. Ferrari, Joker, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I guess Star Wars just didn't have quite the sound mixing to stick around for both of these, which is kind of weird because I feel like those movies are better at mixing than they are editing. Anyway, So Laron Chapman, are you going to stick with 1917?
I'm going to go with 1917 again, but I would be happy with Ad Astra as well, just because it got no love at all this year.
Ad Astra, Dad Astra. The sound of Brad Pitt's tears aren't enough for the Oscar. I mean, again, if I was betting, which I will be filling out a ballot, I would say 1917. But you know what? I'm going to put my support behind Ad Astra as well, because let's give it some love. And it should have gotten something else. All right, production design. So this is like with like art direction, set design type things, right, Laron?
Mm-hmm.
Correct? Yeah. So we have The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Man. I actually feel like this is a tough one.
This is a good category.
Because I feel like all these movies do very interesting things
in different ways.
In very different ways.
I'm going to say Parasite is my favorite. Having seen it, I think twice in theaters now. It's another element that just stands out. That house is just iconic. They built that entire house, and it's structured so well, and it's shot so well in that space. So, I think that would probably be my favorite category. But it really, this one's anyone's game. I think all these are strong categories. I mean, I think the only one that may not, obviously Jojo Rabbit I think is also very good, but that would probably be the one at the bottom of the list for me in terms of design.
Sure. I am thinking. It's really tough because you have The Irishman and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood doing the historical recreation, but from very different worlds, different time periods. Jojo Rabbit doing kind of like a more. God, this is going to sound so cliche. Postmodern, but like it's not really what Nazi Germany looked like. It's probably what we think, we imagine it looks like.
It's an exaggerated version of what.
Yeah, because heightened for the comedy and that tone that
and
he's
it's
creating.
satire, so they're playing to it. Right.
And then 1917, of course, doing like a recreation of a war that I don't think there's any living people left who fought in that war. And then Parasite, which I think is wholly original, which is why I'm also going to go ahead and throw my support behind Parasite. That has been a consistent thing. People have been like, wow, this is a cool thing they did. They built a house, and it's a really cool house. And
it's such a character in the story.
It is.
That just the different layers to the house, the space of it. But.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that will do it for rapid fire round number 2. And things are really heating up as we head into our key categories. Round number 3. This is right. We're getting to the big ones, ladies and gentlemen. The lead actress. We have Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Scarlett Johansson, Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, Charlize Theron for Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger for Judy. Okay, I think we know who's going to win, and I think it's the weakest choice on this entire list. Personally, I'm just going to throw it there. So, Lauren, are you with me? Are you thinking Renee Zellweger is going to take it?
I think she's going to take it. I'm not going to say she's undeserving. I would just say I have preference to another option, but. but I think that I think she's the best part of that film.
Yes.
I think she elevates the material. And she brought obviously some humanity to a character that many people, very beloved woman. So, who did a lot of great things, socially. And I think Renee Zellweger got to the heart of this woman, if not every detail of, her mannerisms and what have you. But I think I was very impressed by Renee. Even if I wasn't in love with the film per se,
it's definitely a traditional. Judy is definitely a traditional biopic, and I think in a very traditional biopic sort of way. The difference now, we're very tired of that formula, but that doesn't mean the performances aren't still outstanding.
Sure.
And I think she's really good. I just was really bored of that movie.
God, oh no.
It's not that she's not good, because I think Judy Garland is a beloved character. I just wish they could have found a way to maybe give her some more to work with, though I think she does very good with what she's got. Yeah. So I would say probably Scarlett Johansson is my first choice.
Yeah.
I was moved to tears by both her and Adam Driver. And I think that I think that movie in general is very good, but I think the two of them are really the standout. And a movie of amazing things, they're the standout pieces, and the way they make her sympathetic and frustrating in the same way. I think both of them are that way. Both of them are that way, and you're like you sympathize with their decisions, but you're like, oh man,
why'd you do that?
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
I have really a lot of thoughts on that movie, but I think this Scarlett Johansson, this is the best performance I think she's given
ever
in her career.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. It was very robust. I feel like that movie in general, I was welling throughout the whole process, because they fluctuate, again, between sentiment and rage and what have you, and just the ups and downs of relationships in general. They just captured so well. And I haven't always been enamored with Scarlett Johansson. I've liked some of her roles over the years, but but this was something that just really stood out to me.
She has certainly become a more not like
more
hyper
polished.
polarizing, but I would say she has in recent years been more divisive than I think she was like even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think this year is a big
It's
big win for her.
Yeah.
Redemption's, I don't know if that's the right word, because everything it's not like she did bad stuff. She just said
she has opinions.
She has opinions, and they aren't always the most informed. And whereas I think these performances kind of bring her back in the spotlight in a really positive way.
Yeah. Where we can celebrate the work and remember why
we love her.
She was a star to begin with.
Exactly. And if Marriage Story didn't walk away with anything else, I would want it to go to Scarlett or Adam Driver, and I don't think either of them are going to get it. But that's my pick on this list. Although I think Saoirse Ronan is fantastic in The Woman, and I think Charlize in Bombshell, it's almost Uncanny Valley how you almost can't distinguish between her and Megyn Kelly.
No.
She's got the voice, she's got the mannerisms down. It is unbelievable how good she is in that movie.
About midway through, you're kind of like, you forget that it's not her.
Yes, 100%. So I think, again, very strong.
And I even give a shout out to Cynthia Erivo. I think I wasn't in love with the film, but her performance is terrific in it.
Well, and speaking about characters or historical figures that are beloved and maybe haven't been celebrated enough, I think Harriet Tubman certainly is
it hasn't really got her due. I mean,
no.
It's the first movie we've had. I mean, it's 2019. So that's insane to me. But
it's weird. Can we get another Harriet? Can we do like how we have this happen sometimes? We're two studios.
Even a series would be nice.
A series,
like an HBO.
Series. Yeah, let's
let's bring Erivo back. She's great. She does it great.
Let's do it. Let's get Cynthia Erivo back and another Harriet role. I would take it. All right, this is going to take us to lead actor Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver for Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix for Joker, and Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes. Very strong category as well. I think these are all very impressive performances, all five of them. Laron, give me the rundown, because I know we have a lot of different opinions about this. Talk about how you feel about these performances. Which one's your favorite?
This is a strong. I mean, there were probably 10 solid great performances this year, so you could swap these out with another 5.
Yep.
But if I had a personal a personal. I'm really happy to see Antonio Banderas snuck his way in there. That was a really great underrated movie this year by Pedro Almodovar. And one that I thought would never get any, maybe a foreign film nomination, which I think it did get nominated for that.
It did, yes.
But I was happy to see him sneak in with a nomination because it's definitely deserving to be in there, but one that I didn't expect to actually get nominated. I do think, hands down, even though, again, didn't love the movie, thought Joaquin Phoenix gave the best performance this year. So I'm actually okay with the love support, behind that particular performance, but the things I would have liked to have seen in here, I thought Adam Sandler was really great, in Uncut Gems.
Oh, come on,
in a very against type role, like I'm not a huge fan of his comedy, but I thought he really disappeared in that movie. So
Adam Sandler, whenever he shows up in a movie that he doesn't write or direct or produce, like when he shows up as an actor, he does such amazing work. He did great in Meyerowitz Stories last year. Of course, Punch Drunk Love, another incredible one. So I think this is like a career.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see. He wouldn't have won, but it would have been nice to get that accolade.
The accolade, and also for the Safdie brothers to see some love for the work they're doing right now. So I think that's a good point.
Also, Taron Egerton was really great as Elton John earlier this year. I thought if I was going to go with obviously because Rami Malek won for. What's the movie now? Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Not that he wasn't good in it, but it was one of those things where I thought Taron really delved deeper into the role.
It was just
a very similar storyline. Yeah. Different character, different people, obviously, but that same kind of realm, So I thought.
I was actually kind of surprised he didn't get nominated, to be frank.
He got a lot of love in the festival circuit, but that's one I was kind of surprised that we didn't see. But I guess they kind of favored Jonathan Pryce over that, and that's fine,
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Pryce, I think that's another career-type nomination thing. Right. He's been doing great work for a really long time.
It was very good.
Yeah, it was very good, yeah.
But my personal choice would have been Adam Driver, though.
Yeah.
I think Joaquin Phoenix gave probably the best performance this year, but I think Adam Driver's been doing great work lately, and that's the best role he's ever done, so...
so this is a tough pick for me as well. I think Leo's great. We always love Leo. He can do no wrong. I think he's great in this role. Antonio, again, underrated movie performance. It's really tough. I think Joaquin Phoenix is spectacular in Joker. I think he makes that movie. I think there are a few other elements in there too, but I think he and the way he performs in that movie really is what elevates people to think this is an Oscar caliber movie.
Yeah, without it doesn't work.
It doesn't, and I'm not saying it's not an Oscar caliber movie. Quite, there are Oscar caliber elements. The most important of which are the lead performance by Joaquin Phoenix. It's just if you don't have him, you don't have a movie.
Yeah.
If you have even just a slightly above average performance, it's still not great. No, it was a home run.
It was a home run,
and I think everyone knows how much he committed to that role. The way he stayed, the way he lost all that weight. It's jarring, and anytime the movie wasn't working, it was him that brought me back into it. Yes, yeah,
he grounds it. He grounds everything.
100%, and so I think he's gonna take it. He's gotten all the the awards.
I just hope he gives a good speech because he's been up and down with the
pretty bad.
He's done the
Actors Guild
was very
good.
Nice. It was like he's accepting of it, but before it was a big finger to everyone in the room, which is it seems to be his personality. But I just not for your Oscar speech. Maybe not. Maybe not there.
Wait. Why are we giving this award? I shot that movie like a year ago.
Right.
Are we not doing the awards for it?
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just thinking about the Golden Globes interview with the press where they asked him a question. Why are you asking me this? We talked about this months ago.
Yeah, he's very antagonistic. It's like, okay, well,
all right. Hopefully he gives a speech. I do think this has been a really incredible year for Adam Driver. Mm-hmm. Marriage Story, conclusion of Star Wars. He was in something else too.
The Report.
Mm-hmm. The Report. Yes. Talk about Oscar snubs. Mm-hmm. I loved that movie. Mm-hmm. That movie cracked my top 10 in the number 10 spot. But I thought it was great. Okay. I thought it was great. Just kind of helps remind us. I think I have some issues with it, but I think the thing it does really well is it basically makes really boring office job work. They found a way to tell that story in a way that was really powerful and engaging, and kind of highlighted exactly, the amount of work that people are doing on the day-to-day that sounds boring and uninteresting and isn't flashy, like how important that work is. So I thought that was cool. But anyway, yeah, he didn't get nominated for that. But yeah, great year for Adam Driver. Probably my favorite. Yeah, I do think Joaquin's great. I think he deserves it. I think the Joker's, again, I think it's the timing. Like, I think it's a deserving performance. And I think it's some of the best work he's ever done. I just think it's just got that weird, like, do we really want this movie to win awards?
That's the whole thing. It's just, it's one of those things where it's just like, I didn't care for the Iron Lady, but obviously Meryl Streep was great in it. So it's one of those things where it's like, your opinion of the film is coloring your opinion of the parts of the you liked, you know. So.
Definitely. So, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and throw that up there. And yeah, so Joaquin Phoenix and Adam Driver, Laron and I are in sync for that one. So that takes us to director. So we've got Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, Cinema. You know, Cinema,
real cinema,
capital C. Todd Phillips for Joker, Sam Mendes for 1917, Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Bong Joon-ho for Parasite.
Well,
boy. Well, we know how the Directors Guild voted.
Yes.
So Sam Mendes, 1917, seems like an extremely likely frontrunner.
Mm-hmm. If it didn't, it'd be going against history, you know.
Correct.
So
it's not that it can't happen.
No.
It's just that it's unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
I will say that the fact that the Actors Guild gave Parasite the kind of love it did does usually when upsets happen, it starts with the Actors Guild because they're I think they're the second biggest voting block behind the Producers Guild. So, yeah, LeBron, I think this is another strong category, save for one of these, and I don't think that the one is bad. It's just Oscar caliber over Ryan Johnson or Greta Gerwig or
Lulu Wang.
Yeah. Cool.
Speaking of, there are no women here, so that's
no women here.
Yeah, I think Sam Mendes has that in the bag. But if I had to choose, I would pick Bong Joon-ho for Parasite.
Yeah. Yep. I would absolutely pick Parasite as well. I think it's a terrific film. I think he is such an auteur of Korean cinema. If you've seen some of his other works, so Okja and Snowpiercer. He's been doing great work for a really long time. So he is definitely an auteur, and I think people might not be as familiar with his work, but like this is definitely a him movie. And honestly, it's a very restrained version. He's normally a little. I mean, I know
he's weird on the surface,
yeah,
and then it gets weirder and weirder. Here, it was very.
We know there's a big. This movie has almost like genre swaps partway through to some extent,
but they're subtle,
very subtle.
They're very subtle. They subtly weave into different things.
It doesn't get as over the top as one would think. Some of his other movies do. And again, I think just again testament to his great direction there. So Sam Mendes is going to probably take it, but anything we can give to Parasite, the better. Okay, cool. So rapid fire round number 3 is going to be original song. I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away, Toy Story 4. I'm Gonna Love Me Again, Rocket Man. I'm Standing With You, Breakthrough. Into the Unknown, Frozen 2. Stand Up, and Harriet. I don't really care about this category very often. I'm just going to be honest, guys. You guys remember that time Lady Gaga lost right after she did like the
most amazing
performance? we were all
Sam Smith with the worst
James
Bond theme song ever.
I bet the Academy. I bet they all felt really awkward whenever they're like, "Oh, Sam Smith." Even though it just was incredible because it was like we were all moved to tears at home. It's like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And the award goes to
not her.
Not her. It's like okay. So Laron, I mean,
okay. So
I have 2 thoughts on this, but I'll let you. I want to get yours first.
Go ahead. I have a surprise choice in here. I've actually kind of fallen in love with "Stand Up" from Harriet. It's a really good standalone song, and Cynthia Erivo is just a great musical performer. So that would be my personal choice. I don't think it has a snowball's chance in hell, but I think it would be nice to see an upset here. I think the one that has the most momentum, oddly enough, is "I'm Gonna Love You Again," Rocket Man.
Yeah, I think so.
And even having recently seen it, I don't ever remember hearing the song, so it obviously doesn't stand out.
No, that was the weird thing. That was the weird thing to me. Wasn't it? It like won the Globes and everything. I was like, wait, which song was that?
Yeah. So this is a weird category because I mean you would think it would be Frozen, but given
the fact they didn't get the nomination,
how lukewarm they are about that film in general this year, maybe not.
I just have to throw something about Frozen. The soundtrack more than I think the story actually does some actually relatively. I'm not saying risky, but innovative things. They didn't stick to formula as much as I thought they would on the story side, right?
Yeah.
But the soundtrack definitely feels like it was made in a factory. They're like, okay, what worked about the last soundtrack? Let's do exactly more of that.
Yeah.
Into the Unknown, catchy as all get out, but it's definitely like the Let It Go
2.0.
Exactly.
2.0.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I am. I don't really like any of these.
I'm going to say Rocket Man is going to probably take it, but if I have a personal choice, Harriet.
I'm gonna love Me Again with Rocket Man. I think is gonna win. Favorite of these? I mean, I guess I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away? Question mark. I don't really like any of these. And to be fair, Stand Up with Harriet. I've only listened to that one 3 times, and it's I don't know. It's one of those. You know how sometimes the movie your reaction to the movie kind of paints your association with the soundtrack.
Sure.
It's kind of one of those.
Yeah.
Harriet, I honestly kind of felt the same way about Judy. I'm like, although that character very important, prominent.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's fine. It was all right.
Yeah.
And the song was all right. Yeah. So I don't really. I'm glad you really like it.
I really like it.
And you know what? I hope Harriet gets some love because let's just give Harriet Tubman more credit, just more cred in history.
Or Cynthia, because she's great too.
Any of them. So yeah, that'll. So if you're betting, I would just say go with Rocket Man. It seems to have the momentum. I think the second most likely would probably be Toy Story 4 just because it's Pixar. But
yeah.
Makeup and hair, we've got Bombshell, Joker, Judy, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and 1917. Other fun facts, you remember when Suicide Squad won an Oscar?
Suicide Squad is an Oscar-nominated movie.
Oscar-winning movie.
Winning movie, excuse me, sorry.
Yes, yeah. So another tough one, I honestly think... And I didn't even love this movie that much, but I would actually probably give it to Bombshell.
I would too. I think it's subtle work.
Yeah.
It's very subtle, but it's effective. Mm-hmm. I mean, what people said right when they saw the trailer for this movie was, is that Megyn Kelly?
Yep.
They didn't know.
Yep.
They didn't know. And that seamless application of prosthetics and makeup, is a testament to quality work, I think. So
right. Yeah, personal favorite. I think probably Joker's got this one, if I had to guess. I feel like that seems like a...
Yeah.
It's
more
thing.
Heavy,
yeah, more flashier,
more in your face.
Yeah,
when you look at it, there's makeup literally on his face in the cover of the movie.
Yeah.
So
yep. So if we're betting, our favorite Bombshell. If we're betting Joker, okay, all right. So the next is costume design: The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
It's a pretty solid category too.
I think overall, I like all these. I think this could go in a couple different directions. I think The Irishman might have the edge on this one. Maybe.
It's Sandy Powell. I mean, she's
known.
She's a sure bet most times.
But that's been the whole thing with The Irishman. Everything seems like a sure bet with everyone
That's
who worked on the movie.
And that might be to his detriment.
Right. I'll go ahead and throw it in there. I think The Irishman could take it. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood also has a pretty good shot at it. I don't know, the Joker with the costume design.
Yeah.
A bunch of angry white people with clown masks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, they dressed a couple of homeless people in the street. I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, there's nothing particularly impressive.
Okay. Listen, bringing that up, my question to you is, if that's the case, John Wick Chapter 2 and John Wick Chapter 3 should have won Oscars by now. Just dressing homeless people up, because those homeless people look way more convincing than the homeless people in Joker.
There you go.
Controversial hot take of the day.
Yeah.
So, Laron, any other thoughts?
I think you're right on The Irishman. Obviously, Little Women's obviously a period piece, so it's prominent there, but it's not necessarily a standout to me. I mean, I was more enraptured by the performances and the writing. So
same. All right, so quickly, best international feature film. We've got Corpus Christi, Honeyland, Les Miserables, Pain and Glory, and Parasite. And I don't think this is
Parasite's movie.
Yeah, this is Parasite. It's nominated for Best Picture and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite one. I mean, Pain and Glory is pretty good. Don't get me wrong. It's very good.
If I had to choose something else, it'd be Pain and Glory, but it's Parasite.
It's Parasite. Not a contest.
If it doesn't win Best Picture, it better win international film.
What if Parasite goes home empty-handed? I might I might cry a little bit.
Don't speak that. Don't speak that into existence.
I'm just saying it could be one of those, the preferential ballot screws stuff up somehow. I don't know. There's no way though. It's like weird how much like positive buzz and like all the celebrities love it or talk about how much they love it. I'm like, it's gonna take it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of rapid fire round number 3. So we have given you our guesses, our preferences, and our bets on what you should pick. So if you follow Laron and I's ballot, which is pretty similar, you have a pretty good chance at kicking all your friends' ass at the Oscars party.
Except for all the shorts.
Except for the shorts. Yeah, don't go to the shorts. Go to like IndieWire or something for shorts film because I was sad to say, normally I at least make it to the animated shorts because they play at a local museum here, the Oklahoma Museum of Art. And this year, the show times were just really strange, and I couldn't make any of them. In fact, I think there was one at like 2 p.m. today when we started recording, and I was like, "Well,
this is convenient."
yeah, it just didn't work out this year. So do not take our word for that. But the event of the evening, Best Picture. So quick recap here: Ford v Ferrari, The Irishman, also known as Cinema, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite.
Okay.
All right, so I just think I do have to say, I know I said this at the top of the show, but I do actually think this has been a really strong year.
Yeah.
I think all 9 of these films that, by the way, there could have been a 10th one to, like Knives Out or something, or The Farewell, or anyway. They did this last year too. You guys, you got 10 nominations you can do. Yeah. 10. There are easily 10 movies you could recognize. Doesn't matter. Just make sure to fill out the whole 10.
The whole 10.
Just give us the whole 10, because like otherwise you got to.
Nine's such a weird number. It's such a weird number. Like if you're gonna 5 or 10, I'm maybe just my OCD, but yeah, whatever.
Well, okay. And it's funny that we're having this conversation now. I have to bring it back. The whole, or at least part of the reason they opened it up to 10 is, if you remember, we made the nod earlier about The Reader taking the 5th spot that everyone wanted The Dark Knight to take. Everyone was up in arms. Why didn't The Dark Knight get the Best Picture nomination? And that, along with a few other variables, they're like, hey, we're going to open this up to 10 Best Picture nominees. For the first couple of years, you're like, we got 10. And it actually hit the gambit pretty well. It was like, so you had like District 9 and Avatar got in there, like movies you wouldn't normally see. And I think that was the whole goal, right? Was to recognize more variety of film. And but like in the last like 4 or 5 years, they never used the full 10.
They never used the full 10. And I don't think the added space, creates, initially, like you said, it was to incorporate, those smaller films that you ordinarily wouldn't see. A film kind of like Winter's Bone or something like that year that came out. But here, what winds up happening invariably is that you wind up filling it with fillers like The Blind Side or Green Book or things like that, where like the more kind of commercial films that kind of slip in, but that made a lot of money, but weren't necessarily well received by critics or what have you. So it's interesting.
It's weird. And it's like they're like, okay, these made a lot of money, so clearly this is what people want to see in the show. So we'll go ahead and nominate it. Another one, Last Black Man from San Francisco. Like what that movie's incredible. Gosh, that could have easily been, and all that. Because here's the thing: even just getting the nomination,
you invite someone to go watch it.
Exactly.
That wouldn't
it elevates it in a way that it might not get that type of attention any other way.
Because people say it was nominated for Best Picture, it must be good, so they'll go see it.
It's at least worth watching, right?
Renting or seeing,
yeah. But no, we got one spot here. I do think that said though, we mentioned a couple of the Extremely Loud, Incredibly Close, The Blind Side, Green Book. We've had several over the years. You were like, why is this here? It's not very good. And then last year we had the travesty of Green Book winning over a lot of good films. A lot of very good films. No one's even talking about the whole legacy of Green Book is, wow, I can't believe that won Best Picture. I can't think of a single person I've heard say since last year, man, that was the best movie. That was one of the best movies.
I didn't hear one person that year say that. Anyone.
I don't know these people. I don't know. But so I do think to the credit, I know for a lot of people, Joker's probably that movie, but I actually do think that movie is competent enough to say, hey, it's not undeserving of one of these spots. I'm not saying it's one of the best films of the year, but I do think it making it in there, I feel that's a credible enough choice. I feel like all of these movies are credible choices. There's not one in here where I'm like, ugh. Yeah. So I think great pick of the 9 you did choose. So I like all of these, but personal choice is definitely Parasite, far and away. Similar to last year, how after really thinking on it for a while, I ended up thinking, okay, First Reformed is my favorite movie of the year, far and away. And earlier this year, it took me a little while to go, but it was after I saw Parasite like twice in a week. And it was after the more I thought about it in that week between the first time and the second time, it was the moments I was looking forward to watching the second time, and then I watched it with a big group of friends the second time. So it was also seeing how are they going to react to some of the stuff, and it really just made it that second time such a special, fun, unique film going experience. And I'm like, you know what? The more I think about it, it only gets better. It only gets better, and it's the whole package. It's got great drama enough that you feel like you can invest. But it's funny. It's got really good commentary, socioeconomics, maybe lightly political. Performances are great. The director's great. Production design's great. Like I just feel like it's the whole package.
It's the whole package.
But I also feel like it's timely enough. It's timeless in the sense that it's a story about the haves versus the have-nots. It just happens to be timely right now too.
Yeah.
It's timeless and timely. So I think that if this was to win Best Picture,
it would say something about the year.
Yeah, and I feel like it's reflective and deserving.
And that's always been, what you and I've always wanted for the Best Picture. It doesn't matter if it's a film that's reflective of the era, because you're going to go back and look at these films historically and see what does that particular film say about that year. Like I loved Birdman as a movie, but that year I was like, it didn't say anything about that year, the narrative of that year, what was going on politically, what was going on socially, artistically in the world. And last year Green Book was that same film. It doesn't say anything about it, so, or maybe it does, but just in the adverse.
Well, I think the thing that's interesting about Green Book is it came the year after The Shape of Water won, which I felt like did say a lot about the time we're in. I mean, that was the first, that was the first, second Oscar show. It was, Trump era,
Sure.
but it's Hollywood kind of reacting to, the type of perspective that we were seeing kind of reemerge, and then you have Green Book, which totally is like, can't we all just pretend racism is not a thing and just get along? It's
and like I said, maybe it is reflective of the year because we don't recognize what's going on in the world right now, so it's like
it's true.
Maybe this film is commenting on that in that way, but I think Parasite would be a historic win. One, I mean, it would be. I think the first
Korean film,
obviously to win, and then obviously it'd be deserving too. It's not a consolatory win, and it would clean the palette from the last year.
Yeah,
so we can talk about, hey, you got something right.
And then the next year we can be like, well, the Academy, they get it wrong sometimes, they get it, but they got it right last year.
Man, look, they gave Parasite the win.
They got it. Yeah, So I think I'm with you on that front. I do think other movies I would not be sad seeing take the win. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman.
Or
and maybe Marriage Story. I could live with Marriage Story too. I don't think that any of those are going to take it. I just think if those were to win, I would be like, all right, I feel pretty good about that.
Parasite's our favorite choice, but what do we think will win?
Oh, well, 1917.
1917. Okay.
Right. Are we on the same page?
I was going to say 1917 or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So, and 1917 has all the energy right now.
It's got the Directors Guild Award and it got the Producers Guild. So those are two really key victories. I'm interested to see if it wins script in the WGAs.
Then
there's not a chance.
There's not a chance, yeah.
But right now, theoretically, due to the preferential ballot, you're right. Once Upon a Time could sneak its way in there. Or Parasite, with the momentum coming from the Screen Actors Guild, could also work its way in there. So it's not a total shutout unless the
It's a race. It's a race, but I think you're right. 1917's at the front right now.
But if Parasite wins, instead of sadly taking shots over Green Book, I will pop the champagne bottle and say,
okay,
we actually picked. We got it. We got it right. You got it right. Every once in a while. Yeah. So I think it's going to be an interesting show. I hope we walk away feeling good about it rather than. And here's the thing: 1917 is not even a bad movie. I think the thing that's frustrating to me about 1917 is not the movie itself. I actually think it's a very impressive technical achievement. It's that they so clearly knew they were trying to get the awards because the campaign, like the release rollout, the campaign has been flawless. And I mean, kudos to them for putting together a good campaign, but I don't think that means it's the best movie.
True. And there's no shortage of war films that have won. So that's one of those things. It's like, it's not that it's not good. It's just that there's there were other more impressive films this year.
Absolutely. And I'll say, too, I think this movie actually, it's different than Dunkirk, but in a lot of ways I feel like owes a lot to Dunkirk making a big splash a couple years ago. That's a movie I probably prefer a little more, but they're both great. Yeah. They're both doing interesting technical things. I just
unorthodox war films. You know?
Yes. I just like this. I like Nolan kind of tinkering with time a little bit differently. But anyway, 1917 seems like a clear victor. I won't be sad if it wins like last year when Green Book won, but I'll just be like, well, that's about what I expected.
It's not an egregious win.
Yeah.
It's just maybe not the preferred.
Yeah, absolutely. Laron Chapman, I think that'll do it for our Oscars predictions. So everyone, thanks you so much for tuning in to hear this year's predictions. Again, if you were betting people, I would recommend you fill in your ballots similar to how Laron or I recommended, because we typically get more right than wrong. Yeah, not all the time. I'm not saying we don't get a clean scape every year, but we usually are like
solid in the 15 to 18 right range.
Yeah,
you know, so.
Yeah. So I feel like if you're going to a party and want to impress your friends, well, we got your back.
And you've seen none of these movies, which I don't know how you couldn't, since half of them were on Netflix. But
yeah, for real. Oh man. Also, I just, on the note of Netflix, I am just so curious to see how many awards Netflix actually takes home.
Yeah,
it could be a bunch, or it could be like nothing.
Nothing.
So. Okay, yeah. It's going to be an interesting year in Hollywood. Now, as we close out the show, I do remind you, if you want to hear more about the animated feature category, I was recently invited to guest host on Harold Storey's Toons podcast. By the time you're listening to this, that should be live on his show. We go way more in depth, talk for about 45 minutes to an hour about that whole category. We actually talk about the Netflix thing a little bit. So if you want to hear like a deep dive into that on his show, you can check that out. That's over at the Toons on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever your podcasts are found. And of course, if you want to read more of our work here, you can at the Cinemetropolis. Just go on over to cinematropolis.com. You can hear more of our podcasts there as well. As you know, we've been on kind of a hiatus lately. Life's been crazy, but I am working on ways to bring this back at a more regular cadence that is also scalable with the situation. So thank you so much to everyone who has been patient and who has tuned in, and I have seen those download numbers roll in every month, and I appreciate everyone who has supported the show so much. So we appreciate you there. Laron Chapman, where can people keep up with you and your work online if they want to keep up with your movie opinions between now and I guess we want to see your post-Oscars reactions?
Right. They can follow me under my first and last name on all major social media platforms, or they can follow my film at Freaky AF Film on Instagram.
All right, fantastic. And of course, you can find me tweeting about all sorts of things, probably angry Twitter Oscar reactions at Seamasters Talk. That's letter Seamasters Talk. And you can find the Cinemetropolis on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinemetropolis, and on Twitter at the Cinemetrop, and on Instagram at the Cinemetrop. All right, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today. May the best picture win. Probably not. We'll catch you all again next time.